Southern California, the birthplace of beach volleyball. And this is Venice Beach and its world-famous boardwalk. But today on Prime, we have something a little bit different. Because just 1 mile inland, in the backyards of Harding Avenue, it's the legendary Shasta Venice Backyard Championships presented by Paul Mitchell. Prime presents the Shasta Venice Backyard Championships. A beautiful day in Southern California for volleyball, right in your own backyard. Hi everybody, I'm Denny Lennon.
Coming to you live from Los Angeles, it's the top-rated show in the Centinela Adobe Corridor, operating in the shadow of LAX out of the 7428 studio, where Jimbo is at the controls and Buck takes a nap until he's got to take a crap. It's Facebook Live at 5.
Hi everybody, Christine here. I'm here to tell you where to find us on social media. So if you can remember these 3 phrases, you can find us anywhere. The first, Sports Stories Podcast. The second, Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. That's Denny like the restaurant, Lennon like the Beatle, or Sports Stories DL. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and of course here on Facebook. Like us, subscribe. If you had a podcast, we'd like you and we'd subscribe to you.
Hey everybody, welcome. Let's do coming up this week on SSDL.
I was ready for that. That would be good.
Okay, we have a big week tonight. Of course, we celebrate the VBC, but Wednesday we have exclusive footage on Paul George when he was a high schooler playing in an all-star game. He goes for 24 in the second half, and we're about the only people that I know of that have this footage. So I'll be with the original broadcasters recalling or reliving this game where Paul George made a name for himself before he headed off to Fresno State and then to NBA stardom. Then on Thursday, we dropped, just like Wayno dropped that shot, we dropped the first of 3 podcasts, video podcast and audio podcast with Wayne Boehle, the legend, 60s. We remember he was an all-conference basketball player at Loyola University, also a all-American volleyball player. Eventually, he would defend the university in the Hank Gathers case. So there's a lot to cover. 1 of 3 drops on Thursday. Find that on our YouTube channel, and you'll get to see all of the archives along with see the interview. And then on Friday, St. John Smith, along with Jim Menges, will join us on the Friday Happy Hour show. That should be a fun one. We'll celebrate the sport of beach volleyball. It's from its evolution all the way into the Olympic Games. Wayne Boehle will also drop in to pump the video podcast a little. So that's what's coming up this week. All right, welcome everybody. It's episode 4 of the VBC. This is the weekly retelling of the Venice Backyard Championships, a legendary volleyball tournament that happened on the streets of Venice, primarily on Harding Avenue, but also on a couple of others. It went from 1983 to 1995. Celebration of family, community, and sport. This week, the greatest player in the history of the backyard, the 2-time champion, is the guest producer. No, he's not a guest producer. He's like a well-worn rug producer. We love Mike Boehle, the 2-time champion. Let's bring him in. MB, how are you, buddy?
DL, it's good to be here. I'm excited about hosting this show tonight, or at least producing it, I should say. So, I think it's going to be fun. I've got my cousin, Kip Lennon, who actually helped me during this past week. And I'm going to bring him on. And, you guys have a little different take on this week's episode. So I'm kind of excited. It might be a little short and sweet, but it's going to be worth it. So I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Kip serves as the assistant to the producer this week. Is that right?
Assistant to the producer. And there's this weird show that was on for a long time. And I'm trying to think of where you got that from. Assistant to the
Office. The Office.
Yes. One of my favorite all-time shows ever.
Good. Yeah.
So I'm actually Michael Scott, and Kip is going to be probably going to be Dwight.
Yeah, he would play that role. But next week he moves into the producer's seat. That's the way it works around here. So
we talked about that, and I said, listen, it's don't be nervous. You just take the bull by the horns and you just decide what you want to do and you run with it. So we've got good support.
Run with the bull.
It's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for letting me do this.
Of course. Well, what do you got in store for today, MB?
I wanted to chat a little bit about last week. I think, after, I thought my brother Danny did a really cool job in bringing my Uncle Tony on board. I thought that was really neat, just to see him come on. And this is what it's all about. We're reliving what we did, 25 years ago. And to see faces and family, it's just so cool. So everybody's being creative. Danny had some great trivia questions as well. We had a little bit of hiccups, and I think we worked those out. So yeah, I'm fired up. When I bring Kip in, I think Kip and I will introduce kind of what we're going to do and what we're going to talk about. So, I'm excited to bring him in when you're ready.
Excellent. And I guess you guys will probably be heading over, since you got the Gilberts this week. You'll be heading over to Gilbert's to toast with them. And then I'll circle back around whenever you need me.
Oh, dude, you better be right on deck, because we're gonna need you. We're gonna need you a lot. Just have the ears burning, dude.
You remember when I would be in the Venice Backyard Productions World Headquarters for backyard volleyball? I was always there for you. That.
Always. I thought you and I worked very well together. We were on the same page here on a lot of different things. So I don't see anything being different about tonight's show.
Sadly, one thing is different, and Mike Lennon, who was working on his computer all week, was not able to get up and running. So Mike will be missing today's show. So we'll be without him. So we'll just adjust on the fly. But fortunately, Ray, who was going to leave because Mike left, he came to his senses and rejoined the show. So Ray will be here.
I have a thought on that, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. Michael Lennon being Mr. Tech Guy, right?
Right.
Probably has 9 different Apple devices in his home. You would think that just maybe, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone, that there might be some way to get back on. But let's see if he does some magic, and I'm sure he's got a couple in the drawer that he hasn't pulled out in a while that he can use to get on this show.
Yeah, sorry, Mike. You would think he would have like a direct line to the manager of support or something along these lines, but apparently he had to wait in line with the rest of us. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I'm disappointed, but I'm also thrilled that Ray's coming on board and stepped up to fill that hole, because it's a big hole to fill, for sure.
Well, nobody fills a hole like Ray.
Founding father Ray.
I think you want to go Gilbert's commercial, and then you guys go on over to Gilbert's. Do we have a hookup in Gilbert's, don't we? Or are we just going Gilbert's commercial?
I think let's go Gilbert's. Let's go. I think we had a hookup in Gilbert's. Yeah, and then we'll bring it in.
Let's go with commercial, and then you guys will be off and running.
Love it.
Mute people.
Gilbert's in Santa Monica. Gilbert's El Indio in Santa Monica. Family owned. Mexican food. Margaritas. Guacamole. Cerveza. Gilbert's in Santa Monica. Gilbert's El Indio in Santa Monica. ¿Me puedes dar una margarita, por favor, señor? Oh,
Hi, Kip. Hey, Mike, I'll get out of your way, but we don't have a setup over at Gilbert's. We'd like to in the future, but Carlos at Casablanca is in charge of that, and it just didn't come through. So that's all I got to say about that.
Do we end the show right now?
Should we just No. We should keep going. We should keep going. But I'll have a behind closed doors talk with Carlos.
Sounds to me like Carlos was a little bit jealous that one night a week it's about Gilbert's and it's not about Casablanca.
It's obvious.
Sabotage, whatever the Spanish word for sabotage is. I don't know.
Fair enough. All right, you guys kick it around.
Absolutely, Denny. Thank you, and we're so stoked to be here.
Christine, I'd like to swipe Denny if that's possible. Can I swipe Denny? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
My cousin Kip, I'm so happy to be here with you. We did this 2 weeks ago. We decided that you and I would do this together, and I couldn't be happier and more proud to be able to do this. So cool.
So good. So first, before we talk about the show, let's talk about Gilbert's. And I have my margarita here. You don't have yours yet, right? It's in the fridge. Okay. All right. We eat ours early because it arrives and it's hot and it's exciting.
Really?
So have dinner at
You know what? I like to wait till after the show.
Yeah.
So I do want to. Last week I did what you did, and I do want to with you. Cheers, Gilbert's, and just thank them so much for what they do for us. It's so cool. Like the delivery, the presentation. I think I talked to you when I got it. I was like, God,
right,
unbelievable.
Yeah. In fact, wait, I took a photo on my phone. I'll just show you on my phone.
Yeah, please.
See it, because it's so exciting when it arrives. It's like Christmas. Oh, you want to see that photo? Okay. Let's see. Like you can see, like all the. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yep,
it's all arrived in one box, and then the tacos arrive in another box with rice and beans, and it is so cool. Like a big box that says Gilbert's El Indio on it, and the food is absolutely unbelievable. It's like winning the lottery every time we do this. So we are so happy that they sponsor it. And for anybody who's local, you've got to support Gilbert's. You know, of course, every restaurant's having a tough time right now, but they are an absolute institution on the West Side. And if you can order food, you know, to go to pick up, it would support them and keep the family in business. We know a lot about how to run family businesses, and they are a long-standing family.
They're incredible. I talked to there's Stravella over there, Rodriguez and Ricardo and Tati and who else? Fernando and they're just such great, and they're always there to help. Like I talked to them today, and they're just so accommodating. And I did tell them, I said, your presentation is better than any presentation I've ever seen, and to go out or to go.
Incredible.
I'm so happy to hear that because there ain't nothing moving in those things. You're not sliding around.
It's funny because, you know, I mean, not to digress, but our family is long, you know, generation after generation of staying in LA, and people think, oh, LA, it's not really a small town kind of vibe, which it isn't in a lot of ways. Like we don't get to have that sort of small town kind of thing. But when you develop relationships with families that run things like at Gilbert's, you feel like family, and it does feel like we live in a small town. You know what I mean? I remember Kevin and I were going to something, and we had to go eat breakfast there really early, and they weren't even open yet. But they saw us in the parking lot. They're like, "Come on in," and they fed us. And you know, they're just a great.
They're so generous. Yeah. So cheers to Gilbert's. Thank you so much, and I'm so looking forward to having my dinner after the show.
Yeah, and I'm on my 5th margarita, so this is great.
Whoa, easy. I think it's appropriate, and we try and do it every show, and I'd like to continue on with this little tradition. At least I like to do it. I want to thank everybody for showing up and viewing and putting their comments out there. It's so cool to see family members come on that I haven't seen or talked to in a long time. It looks like there's a few coming on now, but you're always welcome, and we love hearing what you have and what your thoughts are. And I just want to say hi and thank you guys for checking us out, man. It's a pretty cool thing what we're doing, and hopefully this will just get bigger and bigger. More people will join, and they'll see what kind of a production this really was.
And also we'll try to acknowledge the things you write and respond to those along the way too. Because the first few weeks we got so excited, everyone's just telling stories, and we're sort of covering everything in one big blanket. So now that we're being able to narrow it down and have like a little more calm show, we can start addressing when people write in questions and stuff like that.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. The one thing that I think is important is, you know, we all have to come up with our own storyline. What we're thinking of doing. What do we want to do? What do we want to show the people out there? What do we want to show our viewers this, you know, about the VBC? What are some part? And there's so many different things. And Kip, you and I went back and forth, and one of the things that, you know, I came up with, and I started it a week ago, but you know, it's called the Venice Backyard Championships. So I thought, what better way to host my show with you and talk about our backyards? And it was so unique in what we did to have the tournament played on one block, and we'll get to that a little later, but on one block under 9, some people say 10 homes. And, you know, I want to talk about the backyards and go through each of them, and we'll bring on some special guests that will be able to talk about, you know, some of their favorite moments on those courts and what their favorite courts were. So I think this week is going to give them a little insight as to how this all worked and what it was like to put these courts together, and how the neighbors accommodated us. So that's what we're going to talk about today is the Venice.
Yeah, because it's funny because I never actually, you know, we were all part of this together. You guys brought in Michael and me, and a few of us along the way. We all played in the first one, but we weren't necessarily part of the production. And then you guys brought us in slowly. But there's things that we all made sure everyone was taking care of stuff. So I don't know what happened. Who approached the neighbors and knocked on the door and said, "Can we do this?" I don't even. So I'd love to hear those stories as well.
Right. Well, I think that's what we'll get to, and we're excited. But what I want to do is, I think in the backdraft we have a little bit of. I think we got a diagram that I can pull up, and we'll actually start talking about it. It's pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
But you'll see. So Kevin Lennon, my uncle, your cousin. Back in, God, I want to say it was 1993 or 92, came up with this diagram. And you know him, it probably took him 2 hours because it was so perfect. And it was incredible what he came up with. But you'll see that there's this diagram that shows Harding Avenue and all the different courts that run Harding Avenue. And, you've got Denny's backyard, and then you have a few of the front yards that we ended up incorporating because we got so big. Kip, we have your house. That was, what was it? 944, I think, Harding. We have the Blazers, another family, cousin of ours, and then the Dollins were next to the Blazers. So this diagram gives you kind of an idea of where the courts were and how. I mean, look how close everything was in perspective to the tournament. Like you didn't have to walk very far. It was just right across the street or right next door.
And Kevin did such a good job. Like anybody else would have just put an X where the court is. But he drew
unbelievable. Unbelievable. And from the diagram, I want to get into a video that we did back in 1995. It was with Prime Ticket. And Elaine OK did this video. So it's pretty cool and to give you an idea of these backyards and front yards. Take it away.
We'll mute our mics.
Yeah.
This far unless they can survive all the different VBC courts. Earlier in the day, Elaine Roquet had a chance to take a look at the yards.
One of the attractions of the VBC tournament is that it's actually played on front yards and backyards. I'm on center court right now, which is 2 front yards along with a macadamia nut tree, one of the few in Southern California. Let's go take a look at the other 8 courts, each with their unique personalities. This is Court 1, the backyard volleyball capital of the world, the birthplace of the VBC and backyard volleyball. By the way, that's playable. Court 1 features the Net of Honor, which lists all former VBC champions and is sponsored by Ted Lennon Youth Charities. Court 2, Hidden Valley Ranch, sponsored by Miller Lite, the nicest court in the VBC in terms of grass and level playing field. The ranch-style porch and 12-foot shrubs create a Ponderosa-like setting. But players are asked to leave their guns on the porch before entering the court. Revlar sponsors Court 3, the Meadows, not to be confused with Flushing Meadows. This court was the first expansion court added to the VBC in 1987. Legend has it that barking deer have been spotted on this court in late afternoons. This is Court 4, the Jungle, sponsored by Harry O's. It's named for its former wildlife reserve, which hosted Gila monsters, crocodiles, other reptile, but it's since been filled in. Nobody knows if all those reptiles were caught, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't go after a ball in the bushes or play barefoot here. International Aerotech sponsors Court 5, Queen Isabel's Court, best known for its mound of tree roots, which helps players jump right off the court. Also, Her Royal Highness's court is tightly set between trees, bushes, walls, and electrical wires, all of which are playable. Santa Monica Bank sponsors Court 6, LAMBEAU Field, named for being the worst court in the VBC with the least green grass and a cement walkway that runs down the middle of the court. By the way, this house and yard is for sale, but part of the deed requires participation in the VBC. Panama Jack sponsors Court 7, the FAIRYTALE court where backyard volleyball players' dreams come true. This is the last possible yard to add to the VBC, and organizers of the tournament have waited an excruciating 10 years to get up the nerve to ask the Pastana family for permission to use their yard. Fed Bank sponsors Court 8, the Green Monster, named for its sprawling lawns and 12-foot hedges. This court is the only court outside of the Harding block, and the road trip across Venice and Lincoln Boulevards makes for added excitement. Hey, we know how people drive in LA. And there you have it, the courts of the VBC.
Wow.
That is
Okay,
cool.
so that's our show for the night, and I just want to say thank you everybody for coming out.
Yeah.
You got to see everything.
It is so cool. And Elaine, she was, a ranked player for a really long time in the world, and gold medalist even, maybe.
Nope. But
Yeah.
she was like a top 5 team, top 3 team often on the WPBA tour.
Yeah, I felt bad for her because she comes into this event, and I got to know her pretty well just from playing, but I felt bad because she's probably looking at this like, what is going on here? Like, these are so unique and so weird. Like, you're playing in a front yard with a macadamia. Like, she had to tell these stories. She probably has no clue on what it meant to us. What we had to do.
Right.
But she did a great job in describing. It's so cool, Denny, that you as one of the founding fathers, we get to have you on, and we just want to talk about the 932, the 936, and the 927 Harding. Obviously, it started in your backyard. So give us a little insight as to, and we're here to support and back up, but give us some insight on those 3 courts if you wouldn't mind. And I guess we can call it the 932 is the center court, right? Or your backyard capital of the world, your court.
Backyard volleyball capital of the world. That's just good marketing right there. I think one of the things to remember is different parts of Venice were built at different times, but one of the important times was post World War II. There was this boom in both population and there was the economy, which created this middle class. So what was popular was these ranch style homes and also duplexes that started to accommodate these bigger size families. And a lot of the homes in Venice were built as ranch style. So what that came with was a big backyard, in addition to many times a big front yard. And that's where, the family could congregate and play. And we, of course, found a way in our backyard, just like in other people's backyards, to put up a volleyball net and have competition whenever we'd have our family gatherings. So, that's how that kind of started, at least in our backyard. Have some cool old photos that we'll pull out at one point of just like the Bibles and, the homes coming over to our backyard and playing some good games. But soon enough, we were playing in that backyard. And then everybody on that block had a similar backyard of size. So we had the ability to put these courts in each of those yards. And that was like an important factor in being able to develop and expand on that block.
I remember obviously coming over as in my teens and maybe even a little younger, but I remember coming over to your backyard, and I loved the basketball court. You had a hoop off the garage as well, and then you had this grass area. I mean, Denny, I think at one time we even tried playing golf, and we even started our own little tournament at one time in your backyard.
We did.
If you remember that?
And we
did.
We were good enough. We could play with a real golf ball, and we would chip it over. Like, we go to the front yard and then chip it over the house to land it, and then chip up onto the green, which was another 10 yards away, and then put it in. And we always told my parents that we were playing with wiffle balls.
Oh yeah,
but,
always.
Yeah, that was a good time.
It's so funny, Denny, for you to point that out. It's so true that we always say it's like it's like a perfect storm that all these elements made up the VBC and how it all came together. But that is such a crucial one that no one's talked about, is that the post World War II generation built all these homes with huge yards for their kids, and that just now everybody fills up their yards with home, and they have tiny little yards, no big deal. But we wouldn't have been able to do that unless there were all these neighborhoods with big front yards and big backyards that you can do this kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I always found it interesting too, that, part of Venice earlier in the years was oil well industry was really important to Venice, and all of the workers for that, which were primarily minority population, were pushed over into what we call the Oakwood area. And that was a little more high density in terms of population and stuff. And it was very interesting that during the years 83 to 95, we were doing the VBC on our block, not but 4 square blocks away was a high crime, area, high drug traffic area for various reasons that was inhabited right over there. So the whole story of the VBC, the bigger picture, when you step out a little bit, is it's pretty interesting to think it's like a snapshot of what it was, mid 80s through early 90s in Los Angeles and our country too.
Yeah, no kidding.
I love this camera view. It's so cool to be able to see everybody and talk to everybody. And Christine, thank you for getting that up. It's really cool. Denny, talk a little bit about as we were starting to grow, we started adding backyards and front yards because some of the backyards weren't able to hold us, or they were just they put in either cements or whatever. But 936 center became center court, and I want to say it became center court for 2 years, 94, 95, or maybe just 95. And that was the O'Connors who lived on the south side, or excuse me, on the east side of you, correct?
Yes.
And then
right.
So we used a little bit of both.
Well, the first court we expanded to was the Blazers' backyard.
Yeah.
Right.
And that came on the backside of 86 because if you remember, and this is a crazy kind of stat to think about, we did a 32-team double elimination tournament on one court, one day. Like, that's just a silly thought. Anybody who runs any kind of volleyball tournaments won't think that's possible. But we started, I think, at 6 a.m. and finished roughly about midnight. And I think a lot of our games went to 9. Nonetheless, it was side-out scoring. And then we might have gone to 11 in the later rounds. But if you know, a 32-team bracket accommodates, that's 33 games in order, you know, right? So to get 33 games in a day, I mean, just think if like you're one of the early rounds and how long you would have waited until your game came back up. And it was crazy, but everybody stuck around, had a really good time. I'm pretty sure that's where Craig Kohler had too good of a time and drank too much, was making too many comments. Then the ball goes over the fence and he jumps over and broke their barbecue.
Yeah.
And so then he had to write a letter of apology to get back into the tournament, but he read it at the next year's draw, and he read it so well that it went from he went from winning the Bad Attitude Award to having the Sportsmanship Award named after him forevermore. So that's the beauty of the BBC. You can be all the way down at the Mark Creo Attitude Award and all the way back to the Craig Kohler Sportsmanship Award within a year. But yeah, it was the Blazers as our first expansion.
Right.
And then I want to say it was Queen Isabel's court after that, if I'm not mistaken, but I might be wrong on that.
I think so. Yeah.
We're going to get to those because we've got some people that want to talk about it. But with the center court, with the O'Connors.
I was opposed to that.
I know. You fought hard on that. You did. But we were running out of room, and it was the crowds were huge, and
crowds were big.
And it was kind of a street festival, if you will. But I was always so nervous. I was never the guy that was going to go ask the neighbors. It was always you guys because you lived on the street, obviously. But I remember the O'Connors. My recollection of the O'Connors was the young boys, I think it was Joey and Billy, who would sit up on your little fence and look over to watch the games. And they were just so like enthralled with what was happening. And it was so cool to finally see them grow up. And then we got to incorporate their front yard. But man, how was that like asking them if we could, because you know what we did to those yards after a day of playing volleyball.
Yeah. Well, one of the great stories, I think, is the fact that it was Billy O'Connor, and they had one of those colonial style kind of ranch homes, which was right next, and they could go safely out onto their roof and then look down on our court. And so as tiny kids, you know, anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they were watching. And eventually it was this boy, Billy O'Connor, who was old enough and good enough to play. And then he wins the championship in the backyard he used to look at all the time with you, which was just like, you know, this kind of coming of age story that's pretty cool. But yeah, going over there, they were always a little bit opposed to the idea that we would block off the street, restrict traffic, all of that kind of stuff. And the dad, Bill, he was a lawyer. So, you know, there's always a negotiation. And eventually there was so much, they started to have a party at their house. That was nice that they would have this party and they would invite their friends over. So that's when the tide turned. And that's when I went to them and said, we could really use this. And we brought in Billy Blazer, who cared more about the grass than anybody, to promise them he would take care of the lawn and on the front side and on the back side. And that made all the difference. I think they trusted that Billy would do that. And so we preserved their grass, and it was pretty cool because it was that big macadamia nut tree was there. And look, I knew it was the right move. When people were climbing over from my roof, from the front yard to the backyard to get in because they couldn't get through any of the gates, or they would do the same from the alley. When that was starting to happen, we were incurring some crazy liability. So I knew it had to move out front so it could accommodate the big crowd. But I was trying to hold strong with the idea it was the Venice Backyard Championships, that Fenway Park only holds 35,000. That would make Fenway Park great. So I was trying to hang on to that, but it was inevitable. It had to move out front.
It was originated in your backyard, and that's why we were able to.
I remember when Denny's backyard was still center court and it was absolutely packed, like Denny was saying. People were on his roof of the back house, just like it was bleachers, and everybody was watching. And I remember that year when they gave out the awards. Did we used to have like Rookie of the Year or something like that? Anyway, Vaughn Montgomery was really young, but he was playing, and he was so hyper in that. I mean, he was so young and fired up. And he was up on the roof when we gave out the award. We said, Vaughn Montgomery, best new, whatever it's called, best new player, or whatever, rookie of the year. And he jumped barefoot from your roof over the concrete and landed on center grass.
Yes, he did.
Wow.
And we were all like, no, don't jump. We were saying it on the mic, don't jump, don't jump. And he just went, ah, and everybody was like, woo! You know, still makes my spine tingle.
No, I love it. Kip, you and I touched on this, and then Denny will confirm it. We have about 30 seconds to talk about this one court. It was the last court to be added, and it was the Sassons who lived in that house.
Yeah.
You were right, Kippy. It was Lee Sasson, and Roger Sasson was the dad, I think.
No,
And so,
yeah, Roger was the uncle. I don't know. Shelley Sasson and Lee Sasson.
Lee Sasson, but that was the last court that we added, and it was, I think the Pastanas, Denny, owned that. They bought it from the Sassons, and took us 10 years to finally ask, as Elaine, mentioned in the video. But that was the last court, and it was called the Fairytale Court. And just touch on that real quick, if you don't mind. I'm going to bring Kevin in a second.
Oh, yeah, it was. We knew we needed it, because the games were going long, and it was. I think everybody that grew up on with big families on blocks and stuff, there's always the one door you don't kind of want to knock on, whether it's Halloween or you kick the ball over into their yard or whatever. And sometimes it's because they're mean. That wasn't the case with the Pastanas. They were just private. And even though I knew John, he was about my age, and I played on a little league team with them, I almost never saw him over there. And you always wonder what went on in that house. And if it was would you go in and never come out? So it was one of those things. And even though we were in our young 20s and shouldn't have been scared like that, we still were just talking ourselves into it. But yeah, at some point we went over and talked them into it, because it was they didn't have a choice at that point. They're locked in for the day. The street would be blocked off. There's 1,000 people on our street. All of their parking's going to get taken off. So they were held captive anyways. So eventually they just went, oh, okay. And again, I think the card to play always was Billy will take care of your lawn. Yeah. And between, and Kevin also did a lot of work of that, too. But, Billy was always head groundskeeper at Augusta National. So I was like, Billy, it'll look better than it ever did. You'll see.
Fairytale Court came off because of the way the house looked, right? It was kind of shaped like a cottage almost. It was like this. Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah. A dream, and also a dream come true, but it did. It had that. Yeah. It had that whole kind of look to it.
Right. Well, this is awesome, and I love it. And you're going to come back and help us with some of your favorite stories and some of that have taken place on Harding. And I think we've got Kevin in the hub right now, and we're going to have him talk about a couple of more homes on that block, including his own that we used. And we're going to bring the diagram back up as well. So there he is. Hi, Uncle Kev.
Hi, Mike.
And Kip's here too, and we're going to bring the diagram back up. But I'm sure you've been listening, but we're talking about the courts of the VBC, and I thought that's something that we should talk about because, Venice Backyard Championships. And we gave you props on this unbelievable diagram that you drew back in 1993. I think it was, Kevin. I told Kip, I said it probably took him 2.5 hours because it was so well done and so perfectly done.
Well, to scale,
You bet. That's oh, that's so good. That's so good. Well,
people needed it as a map because there were a lot of strangers that didn't know what houses were in, the house that was a block over and everything.
All right.
Yeah. As the three of us talk and the diagrams, hopefully in the fourth window. Yeah, perfect. Kev, I wanted to talk to you about, there's 3 courts. One of them is going to be yours, which you called. But one of the things that I want to ask you too is how you came up with some of the names of some of these courts, because I think you were behind all that. And we can help because I think I came up with them, helped a little bit. But there's a couple, there's the ones that I want you to talk about, if you don't mind. 919, which was the Meadows, which was next to Denny. He was on the west side of Denny's. That was Frank and Marcia.
I thought Meadows was Billy Blazer.
Sorry, that was Billy Blazer. Sorry, Meadows was Billy Blazer. 919 was Billy Blazer. Yeah. So how did we come up with Meadows for Billy Blazer?
Meadows, that was kind of Billy and I believe. But you walk back there and it was like being in a, remember Aunt Mary's trees by then had really started to grow over, and it was like kind of the biggest area until I think probably we did my court. it was really like the biggest area. Center court obviously became, in the front was the biggest area, but at the time it was just a giant kind of sprawling backyard, and it just looked peaceful out there, like you'd see a deer running around.
Remember how hard it was to get that court? Like Aunt Mary wouldn't let us get it. It was just every year.
That lawn, man, that was a thick. I don't know what kind of lawn that was, but it was like
it took a while.
Well, it took, you know, Retson chewed that. Retson was back there for so many years. Remember Retson, the Doberman pincher they had?
Yeah.
Man, it just ran wild. So there was that court, and then 918, which was the Nargi's house, Kev. And that was kind of, oh God, we really need this court, but how scary this court's going to be.
That court was like torture for people, and we always felt bad. Like, you know, I ran the board, so I basically controlled who played where. And you know, there's certain games that you just couldn't make somebody go play on that, or you knew it'd be a great game and someone was going to get hurt, you know. But
and how did we, like, I got hurt one year, but it wasn't on that court. I don't think anybody got hurt on that court. And I asked Kip, I said, I have no idea why Kevin called it Valyermo, and Kip gave the story. So Kip, there was LAMBEAU Field and Valyermo. So Kip, talk about
Valyermo was a fair that Frank Nargi used to work the fairs.
Okay.
And he used to bring a spin art machine, and he had all the games, and we'd go out and work. He'd pay us to work there. I think we got 50 cents a day or something, and we'd work the fair. And so it was kind of a joke, like Tommy, Jeff, and I, we always called that, like, Frank Nargi was always associated with Valyermo Fair. And so that just became the name of his court.
Yeah.
It was an awful court.
So the reason, I think what we didn't point out was the reason that was such a dangerous court. The other one, it's not the Nargis, right? It's
Nargis, 918 Nargis, yeah.
It's because there was concrete path running right down the middle, and we covered it with like sort of
fake
AstroTurf. But like, you've got some pro guys coming from the beach volleyball. The court's smaller, it's tighter. You're jumping up and you're landing after, you know, a big hit, and you're landing on concrete with AstroTurf over it. Like, it's pretty lucky that we didn't have any really bad.
You know, I think the biggest obstacle was the games between, you know, 6:30 in the morning and about 10 o'clock when the grass was wet.
Yeah,
I think that was the biggest challenge: is what to wear. Do you wear cleats? Do I wear bare feet? You know, what am I going to put on to get through those first early games? Because you could lose a game just by slipping 20 times, and you know, but people would do it. They, you know, fall, and that was the early injuries. Would be early in the morning, hamstrings and stuff.
Yeah, good point. I thought there was one year that we even tried to do plastic over their lawn to try and keep it from the moisture. Remember we tried to cover them?
Yeah, it just wet underneath.
Yeah, it was
we were watering everything so much. Billy and I took care of all the like watering, and we super greened everything, and we paid, you know, you remember that? How green it was? We like made magic out of nothing.
Yeah.
But in doing that, there was so much water in the ground cover that when you try and cover that at night, it would sweat. So it would just be wet anyways. It was we thought it would work, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And then you were one of two courts, and we'll talk about the other one in a sec with Kip, but you were one of two courts that went off of Harding Avenue, your backyard. We used your backyard. Yeah. And I don't remember why, but I think it was because we were getting so big and we were running out of room. I think we were running behind too, remember?
Yeah, when we signed the thing for Prime Ticket, they said we can't film at night. It's going to be too hard logistically, and that we knew we had to have the tournament happen before dark. And so that's why we added the Pastana court you had talked with Denny about, and we added my court. And the other thing, remember, we got rid of the Bible's court. We lost a court.
Kippy brought that up to me, and I don't remember that. And there's we used to play in the Bible's court, which was next door to St. Mark's. That was the first off-site court. And we got that court early on. We played there for 3 years, and we couldn't play there anymore, and everyone hated it, and the ball would always get lost. It was really hard to keep the games going, so we knew we needed 2 more courts to make the tournament work for TV. And so we did my house, and because I had a huge backyard. I had probably as big a backyard as Billy did back then. Why did you call it the Green Monster?
Yeah.
Why did you call it that?
Because we had the high green hedges all the way around, and just, you know, Denny and I like the baseball kind of funny thing like that. So
yeah.
No, I remember walking over there just to check on something, and then walking back, and it was like this doesn't seem right. We're walking off Harding Avenue into
Yeah.
La La Land, and you were only 2 minutes away. It wasn't far at all. It was just
Right.
your backyard was so cool. And
What started
we always
that, we decided
what was
we-
cool
we'll do-
about what we did is that we had these banners, so we made every court look exactly alike. Like we didn't skimp on any one court.
No.
We made the courts look professional. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
It was
That's a
so
lot of
neat.
work.
Well, so Kev, I'll move into that then because you mentioned it. Is the Bible court, and Kip, you can help me out. Is the Bible court, and again, I had no idea this court even existed, but Danny and Mimi Macias lived on Coeur d'Alene Avenue, and their address was 850 Coeur d'Alene, and we used their court. It's in the diagram. And we used their court. Is that the Bibles or no? Different.
I think Mimi and Danny ended up renting from the Bibles when they moved away. Is that right? Mimi can text me and let me know.
Danny and Mimi are online right now. Maybe they'll answer that.
Yeah, they
But
can write
Kev,
it.
is that the court you're talking about?
Yes. Well, I'm just telling you that Pat and Darlene Bible lived right next to St. Mark's, and we used to play in their backyard. I'm positive. We played there at least 3 years.
And that's
Sure,
why
no, I'm not doubting it.
that's
I
why
just don't remember.
Court d'Alene, because it was on Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Court d'Alene.
Yeah.
God, that's so wild. I just had no idea. It doesn't ring a bell to me.
Well,
That's
you know,
so weird.
because you wouldn't have just refused to play there. Kind of like I think I played one game there ever because I controlled the board. There's no way I was going to go over there and play.
Well, that was all part of the deal. Anybody who was on the board or the committee
That's the beauty of it. You know,
couldn't go that far away.
If you only knew how much people would beg me to put them on certain courts, just beg. It was unbelievable.
it's so funny because like the Gillis tournament has its own history and everything, 50 years and amazing and stuff, and theirs was about like partying, and then people got too serious and everybody had to drink on the court and all that when we were teenagers. And with ours, the great equalizer was that you have to walk to people's backyards and you got to play, and it's side out scoring, and it just takes forever, and you got to wait for hours. Like all these pro guys that were so amazing got brought down to the same level as everybody else because, like Kevin said, you don't even know whether you're supposed to wear cleats or barefoot or shoes or what.
Yeah.
It was so competitive.
Remember, everything was in play on every yard.
Yeah.
Side of the house, the power line that ran right through the middle of like the Bible's yard, and
Yeah.
the Bible's had a power line that was literally only about 11 feet high and went right through the court. You had to time your jump. If someone set you and the ball hit the wire on the way down, then you had to.
3 roots in my mom's backyard in Queen Isabel's court.
Yeah.
A couple of big roots.
Yeah, that was a dangerous court. It was pretty, but it was dangerous.
Yeah.
It was amazing that we were able to get that many courts and on one block. It's still mind-boggling to me. It just blows my. And I think what we used to do too, and I'm going to bring Denny on in just a second, but we used to shut the courts down based on which we thought were not the great courts. Remember, we'd shut them down like, okay, we're winding down. We can close off Nargi now because we don't want anybody getting hurt.
Yeah.
Because that was gnarly. Like there was cement running through the middle.
Start with the most ones and get rid of them. Yeah.
That's what we did. We shut them
Games
down.
were getting better and better because you're starting to weed out the rotten teams, and then it started to get where like people say you can't make so and so go play on that court. That's too good of a game.
Yeah.
So
No, you're right.
I kind of that probably me kind of like trying to figure out the best way to make it the best viewing thing by working the board that way, But that was something
You
else.
did an unbelievable job with the board. You're not going too far because you're going to come right back. So I got some other questions for you.
Can we bring up that photo big so we can see it?
Sure.
Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Kevin making the board with Denny.
And that was after we went from 32. That was 64 team double elimination side out scoring. 64 teams.
And there wasn't one misspelled name, and it was perfectly written on that board that you had.
Well, you remember we start making nicknames up for people too.
Yeah, Marty was.
It was unbelievable. You controlled that whole thing. You did such a great job. So thank you for giving us a little bit of background on those courts. And we're going to bring Denny in right now and talk to him, and then we're going to bring you back. So hang tight, and we'll see you in a bit.
All right.
Kip and Denny in the diagram. Looking forward to this. Kip, we're going to touch on your court.
Yeah.
Your mom's court, your house, and then and the
Hi, Mike.
Dollins. And hi, Dan.
I wanted to say that was a time and a place where it was appropriate to go topless. That's why Kevin and me are pictured as such in that last photo. So let's not hashtag it, right? Let's let it go.
Yeah.
And I also want to make reference. let me know when we get to the Dollins court, because I have a bone to pick with that crew back there. So go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, no, that's the last 3 courts that we're going to get to right now or actually the 2, because we hit on Mimi and Danny's, but Kip's going to kind of talk about Queen Isabel's court. And I think that was obvious why we named it Queen Isabel.
Yeah. That's my mom's name, Isabel.
Yes.
So.
And you can go into that, and then the Dollins court. So you can both touch on that because you grew up on that street and you know a lot of history on that backyard. So I don't know exactly when Queen Isabel's was added, but I know we had to butter her up a little bit to get that backyard. And you know, as soon as you walk over and you get the aroma of that chocolate cake that's cooking,
and it's like, well, okay, if you want to, and then
Kip, elaborate on that a little bit. Like, do you think she would be? Do you think she was open to the idea, or do you think she was a little leery of what we were going to do? Just talk a little bit about.
I think my mom, just in general, on any topic, is like, well, okay, I guess, you know. But then it turns out she's thrilled. And she's totally happy to have everybody there. She's giving everybody coffee. And I remember Mom giving people coffee who would show up early for the early games. And it was so cool because my dad had installed those light standards when we were kids so that Mimi and Danny could play, my brother Dan, could play with their friends. And so it was always really competitive volleyball in our backyard. So it was sort of like the natural extension of the VBC to add my mom's court. Because we've been playing back there for years. And all of a sudden, you know, it was the type of thing where my dad would have, too bad my dad wasn't alive at the time because he would have absolutely just been thrilled about the whole thing.
And I do remember what you were talking about, the roots, because it kind of gave that extra little lift. If you hit it right, you got that extra little jump on it. Because I played on it 2 or 3 different times. And it's kind of like, oh, I got it pretty high there. And I realized there was a root that was growing in the grass.
And with the dimensions, you know, the court was smaller than pro courts. By what was it? 20 by
40.
20 by 40, and the pro courts were 30
by 60.
Yeah.
60, yeah.
So that was the other great equalizer when pros would come and play. They could bang a ball, but they would hit it too deep so many times. I remember watching Owen McKibben and those kind of guys try and slide the court because they'd get so high and they'd hit so hard, but they'd hit it too deep. And people that had been playing for years, they knew how to just get out of the way and let it go out of bounds. And so it was interesting that it felt bigger in my mom's backyard or the Blazers or in Kevin's. But in fact, they were all the same size.
Yeah.
It's just more room to run around.
No,
so
absolutely.
Some of those courts were just gnarly. You know, people falling in the bushes at Denny's house and stuff.
I forgot. We did fail to put historical context. We know your mom's name was Isabel, but we want to remember that Queen Isabel was, you know, a monarch in Spain, late 15th century, early 16th century. And if we failed to mention that, we would just be failing history. So I just wanted to get that in, guys.
And those that, you know, forget history are doomed to repeat it. So
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's funny because I'm looking at some of the comments that we're getting up on the side there, and it's like, are the Dollins watching? Are the Blazers watching? It's like we can only do so much, you know. Family, get the names out, get it out there, let them know, and call them, tell them to watch. It would be great to have them back on and talk about it, and you know, nothing makes me happier than to have all that. But it's cool.
Right. Your mom is asking if Pitbull got his name from BBC announcers and cousins, but I think we were already calling him Pitbull before that, but I don't know why.
Yeah, I think Kevin came up with that one again.
Yeah, we have to ask Kevin that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So Denny, here's the big one, and Kip, you guys can take this. But as a kid, growing up, I was on Harding Avenue once in a while, you know, to whether it was for a party or we were playing in the backyard, whatever it was, but not all the time. But I was always so scared to go into the.
Oh, I think he's going to say he was scared to go to the Dollins backyard or yard. And that's the one that would scare you. And we used to, as entertainment, the Dollins who lived on the block were, if I'm not mistaken, 8 boys and 3 girls. But they would have anywhere from 5 to 7 cars and trucks that were being repaired in their driveway, 2 boats, 3 boats. And then in their backyard, they created kind of like a preserve, a wildlife preserve that ranged from chickens to alligators and everything in between. And one of the things we would do to entertain ourselves as kids is we would sneak up that carport, kick open the door, and just watch them eat dinner, which it was not eating in any normal way that the rest of us know about eating. It was complete chaos. Anyways, that family is in and of itself a documentary reality show waiting to happen. But when we got their backyard, that was a concern because we knew there was a lot of work to do back there just to carve out enough space for a court. But then once we did, suddenly, Kevin, everybody was saying, I'll play my game in the jungle, because we called it the jungle. And they kept saying that. And I wanted to know why they're saying that. And I walked back there. Now, keep in mind, Venice Backyard Productions was in charge of the VBC, a nonprofit with all proceeds going to St. Mark's School in Venice. And I walked back there and they had a margarita bar and selling like burritos. And so it was a whole thing going on in that backyard. And they just ran with it. They ran with it. They're doing money hand over fist. And I'm still thinking about retaining VBC #1 champ Wayne Boehle to further adjudicate this at a time to be determined.
So great. Okay, sorry, but we got to stop just real quick and give a shout out. Chrissy Blazer, great one.
Oh,
that's huge, right?
That's big.
That's unbelievable, and I miss her dearly, and I miss her fierce competitive husband, Billy Graywin. So I just got to say hi to Chrissy Blazer. We're going to get them on one day to come talk about the backyard. But hey, Chrissy.
Me too.
So
Hi,
cool
Chrissy.
you're on.
That's brilliant.
So neat. So great. So then we did a lot of work in clearing that backyard out. Right?
The Dollins. You're talking about the Dollins. Yeah.
Yeah, the Dollins. Right. We did a lot of work because there was room, but we had to do a lot of cutting on the trees, and then the grass wasn't in great shape. So we had to make sure that we did some damage control, which was Kevin and Billy's job, and it was unbelievable. So it was cool to hear that background and that story. And I still get the willies walking through that little gate, that little archway gate, just going into the back because I feel like an iguana is going to pop out or something weird.
Wait, I mean, I'm not kidding. I grew up on that street, obviously, as well. And literally, you could go and play with them, and someone would say, "Oh, yeah, we lost the cobra last night," or, "Oh, the tarantula is lost, but we'll find it. It'll turn up." Playing bumper pool in the house, and then all of a sudden you hit the ball in the hole, and then the ball comes back up because there's a kitty in there, and they're like, "Oh, there's the kitty!" That was just the way it was. Alligators and snakes and chuckawalla running across our backyard, and it's like, "Oh, that must belong to the Dollins," So if you had them in a movie, no one would ever believe it. You'd go like, "Oh, come on, there could never be that many things going on in that house." So for them to clean it all up and for us to go back there and have that be part of it, it was just perfect for the tradition of the VBC.
Ivy gateway, all ivy. So you walk through this gateway, had a duck in there, and you go right by this what used to be a massive pool, like what are those called, above ground pools? Yeah. Oh boys. And that was filled in. And so you didn't want to really look over that because you had to be careful if you looked over that. And right next to that was where Tony lived in a trailer out back. And it was in our best interest to throw a padlock on the door when the day began, just to keep that hurricane from happening. And then, you'd play your game, and that had the telephone lines as well, and various people coming and going. People would come out of that house and would have no idea that there was a tournament happening that day because they were like, there's people that were just shacked up, they were boarding, and they would come out and they would go, "What is this?" And man, I think that if you ask me, that took everything up a notch because it just created that sense of chaos and what might happen there.
Yeah.
We talked about closing courts, and I think that was probably one of the first courts that we wanted to close.
Who said this?
We did. We talked about closing the court.
My sister Sally said I had a snake crawl over my foot going through that gate.
Oh,
that's really funny.
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Sally.
I want to bring. I know Michael Lennon's not in the hub. Right? What? Go ahead,
Kevin, about the Pitbull story. If he was named because of the VBC or was before that?
I named Pitbull. I think more at paddling, when we were paddling, we first started paddling, but it was about the same time as the VBC was we were doing the outrigger canoe, but it was definitely when he first moved in here and I got him into paddling down at the beach, and all my friends just couldn't believe this guy was, he was Pitbull.
Mm-hmm. For those who are listening, that's our cousin Mark Lennon, who was a little bit older than us, super, super fit, and he was built like Pitbull. Incredible football player and paddler and
BBC champion.
BBC champion and hilarious.
No, two time, right?
Yeah.
Champ, yeah.
And a king.
2 times.
And a king.
And a king.
which puts him ahead of you in theoretical point standings, Mike.
Earlier,
No doubt.
Scott Rice.
I'm going to wipe him off, Christine. How do I wipe Danny
Scott
off?
Rice texted, "Who is the VBC GOAT?" You hear that? No.
Who's the what?
We know who the VBC GOAT is right there.
Who is the VBC GOAT?
Yeah.
Uh,
Greatest of all time, Mr. Michael Boehle.
We'll talk about that another time. That's very nice of you, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you. I'm humbled. I want to bring Danny Michael Lennon is not here, right? He's not in the hub. He's not reading. Michael Lennon is not here. Is that correct?
That's correct. Swipe me away now because I got to go get a charger for my.
Yeah. I want to bring Danny Boehle in and Kevin, and I just have a couple of questions for you guys. That's it. Is DB available?
Where's DB?
I was reporting that Danny was not in attendance. I'm not sure. He might have fallen out of the queue. And so I'm sure he'll come back on. But Christine will let me know.
So
He's back. He's back. I'm out.
He's back. Bring him up, DL. Hi, DB.
Hi, Mikey.
Hey, DB.
Good show. Hi, Mikey. Kev.
How we been?
Kev, Kavana, Mike.
Obviously, this week I chose to talk about the backyards, the courts, all 9, sometimes 10 courts that we had. And the question I have for you, and it's going a little longer than I thought, but it's okay, is I want your favorite court, and it could be like where you loved it. What court was your favorite? Why? Or do you have a fun story you want to talk about the court? Danny, I'll ask you first. What was your favorite court to play on? And if there's a couple of them, that's great. I know what mine is, and I'll talk about mine later, but what is your favorite court? Why? Or do you have a story that you want to tell about the court?
Yeah.
DB.
Yeah. So I would say, and Kevin kind of hit on it earlier, we as a committee had, so what would we say were the 4 courts? Backyard, Billy Blazers, O'Connor's, and Isabel's. Like those were our 4 courts that, like, we didn't get put out on Coeur d'Alene, I don't think. We didn't, as much as we tried not to go in the Dons or the Sassons. So I would say of those 4 courts, that the backyard means Denny's backyard meant more to me, and he hit on it a little bit that he didn't want to change it because of the name and backyard, which is true. But we knew all the kind of the breaks of where we can hit it off of and what we can do. And it had the net with all the names on it. So I think that meant more to me to play on that court and win on that court. And I also played in every one. So I think that backyard was the yard I'd like to play on, or I would want to play on if I had a choice today or back in that day. But I also think that Mimi and Danny's yard, looking at those pictures back in the day, looked pretty nice. Like I didn't realize how big and green it was back there. To see the picture and the video of that when Elaine was explaining it to it. So, but I would probably choose Denny's backyard. Don't have any great stories other than that. I lost a lot to you in Denny's backyard. And I think I only played once on center court when we had the big Shasta in '95. But other than that, it was Billy's or Denny's. And I played in Queen Isabel's court a lot. So, but Denny's would have probably been my favorite.
Very cool. Yeah, it's some history back there. Well, thank you, and hang tight because I'm going to ask Kevin the same question.
Yeah.
Your favorite court, Kev, whether you played on it or not, and why, or if you have a fun story you want to talk about.
My favorite court, only because it was like a vision I had that we made come out, was that front center court. And when we built the giant stage with the giant backdrop and the bleachers and like that whole production of trying to make that happen, and we finally did. And I know Denny kind of like always poo-pooed it, but that was like, that court was awesome. And that big stage, I get to have the board up there instead of me, being stuck down in the ground, and I couldn't see the games, and I'd be stuck in the back. From that court, you could see all the games, and I could see what was going on. But as far as playing, that front court wasn't there when I won it in '88, and when I won in '88 was obviously Denny's backyard. So that's the most special one to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on DB. My favorite court was Denny's backyard, only because that's where the original court was. That's where we started. That's where it all that's where it all happened. And to do what we did in those 12 years was just incredible. And so the memories I have of that backyard, I know we had to get out there too. I was in more favor of going into the fronts and using front yards, and because we were just getting too huge and it was taking forever to finish. But
Yeah.
that backyard court, I mean, it was, I got to win there twice, which was really cool. But it was there was just something special about it, the confines of it, and then when you had so many people in that little area. But Danny, I agree with you. I think that was just because it was the original.
It's almost like take away the Celtics and the Lakers, take away the Forum and the Boston Garden, like. That's their home. Like, you don't want to beat Boston on that. You want to beat them at the Garden back in the day when we were all growing up, watching Magic and Worthy and all those guys. Yeah. So it's the nostalgia of a court. Yeah, they all grow up and go at some point, and money comes in, and they blow them up and build something big. But for sure, that backyard was all time.
Hey, how about
so
Mark?
The question yeah, I know. This is what I was going to do. I wanted the people that are online right now watching us, and Loreno is obviously a legend in his own. Like there's no fighting that. Like he's a legend. And so I wanted to ask those who had either played in the tournament or were part of that neighborhood. I wanted to see, like, to get their opinions. Like Loreno just chimed in and said Denny's backyard. Like anybody who has a comment and wants to throw in their 2 cents, we'd love to just put it up there and talk about it. But Mark, you're in good company because a lot of us feel the same way, and you're missed, man. And we're going to get you on this show very soon, so you better be ready. But
hey, MB,
I'm going to bring – go ahead.
MB, real quick, did you see Michael Lennon is on there?
Aunts and uncles were only in backyard court. That's why.
Michael Lennon.
Wow.
But he's not.
Yeah, I miss Michael. Yeah.
He's on our
I wish
telecast.
he would have gotten his computer fixed. His computer broke, but I thought for sure he'd have one of these things, these little iPhones that they have now that you can get online with. But
just giving you
now,
crap, Michael.
He's sorely missed, big time. We love you. We love you. Love you. You're an important part of this program, Miguel. All right, I'm going to bring Denny and Ray and Kip back, and they're going to do the same thing you guys did. Thank you guys very much. Love you.
Good show, brother.
Soon.
Yeah, great show.
MB, I know what you're going to ask me, so while Christine's bringing up the other two, I'll jump to it. Here's what's a couple of things. One, I went to games in the old Yankee Stadium and the new Yankee Stadium, and all the amenities in the new Yankee Stadium are great, and it's really well laid out, and it's beautiful, but I preferred the old Yankee Stadium. And so that's kind of like the sentimentality I had for our own backyard court. Second on that was we would play, if you remember, a lot of one-on-one on that court. We would play one-on-one against me and you play against each other, and Ray. Everybody else would come over. We play some one-on-one, and so you learned all the bounces because you had to like hit it off of a roof or hit it off of a wall in order to keep it alive for yourself when we play one-on-one. And so you learn the bounces more in that backyard. And then third was what Michael Lennon said about the aunts and uncles. What evolved was the late, great turnaround Bob Hines built a beautiful deck in my backyard. And so this deck overlooked that court. And then you, of course, could walk through the house and get to the front yard court. But the place where the aunts and uncles, and for those that don't know our family, the aunts and uncles were our Mount Rushmore. It was really important to impress the aunts and uncles. And so they would come that day. They, of course, we'd have to move the barricades and get them in. We'd hear, Uncle Ted's coming, Uncle Jim's coming, whatever. We'd have to move the barricades, let them park in one of the few spots that were on Harding Avenue available. They would come in and they would sit on that beautiful deck that Bob Hines built, which was great. And my mom would make her quiche. She made a mean quiche. She'd also make I think it was like a blueberry kind of something. And then she would scramble eggs because, that's a staple in this world. And she would make this brunch, and they would sit out there and they would watch. And I just remember one time having a great game, and I think me and Michael Blazer won a game, and Uncle Jim going, "Boy, I think that's the greatest game of volleyball I ever saw." And I know it wasn't. I know he was getting up there in years and so forth, but I felt so proud that Uncle Jim said that I had a great game of volleyball. And so that kind of stuff, I think, really happened in our backyard. That was a little more difficult out front, where it was a younger crowd, more party atmosphere. Mm-hmm. That's where the big stage was, where you could grab a beer out of the thing. And it was all going on out there in the front yard. And the horse was going down the middle of the street, and the car was being raffled off. All of that was there. But the purity of the sport and the origin of what we built was in that backyard. And so that's why, of course, that's my choice.
Yeah,
it's unanimous so far. So Kip, go for it.
I can't imagine anybody not thinking that. I mean, It's like, it's like being where they invented golf or where they invented basketball or where, whatever. This is where the VBC started. So there are other better golf courses, but everybody knows where golf started. So when you play there, and it's the same thing with the VBC. It's like that playing off of the wall there on the east side of the court, the northeast side of the court, where you could play off. You just get used to all those bumps and all the, like Denny was saying, and then to know that the aunts and uncles are watching, and that's the court where we have the microphones. So everybody's, it's funny. There's more music. Everybody's grooving in between points and stuff. And if it got too serious, then everyone go like, "Oh, look who lost his temper," and all that. It was a circus. It was an absolute joy of a circus. It was just too great. So when you're playing on that court, like Danny Boehle and I had a good run one year. Denny and I did before I went to work that day. Yeah. And we played a lot of center court games. And it was just, there was nothing more fulfilling than that feeling when you walk off that court when you just had a great game and you hear all the aunts and uncles going, way to go, Kippy! And, like,
yeah, I got the same feeling that both of you had. It was like you got approval from them, and it was like, whoa, okay, like, bow down, and it was just that was the presence that they all had. So I remember that. Did Ray did Ray leave?
Yeah, I just
that's okay.
I think what's great about the VBC that makes it different than anything else our family has done along the way, whether it's the Turkey Bowl or 4th of July or whatever, this was, you guys made it up. It did not exist, and then it existed, and it started with you guys, as opposed to like, Turkey Bowl, the tradition is amazing, and we've been doing it for 50 years and, whatever it is now, 60 years. But this started with you guys, and you turned the dream into a reality, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So they were even more proud of all of us and of you guys that you could put together this huge, huge event every year that started with you guys, just with your idea. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about it and where it all started, and during these crazy times that we're all in, not to get sentimental, but it's so cool to come back and talk about the memories that we had and how great they all were, and now we get to relive it with us. And I think that's what I love about this weekly show, is that I get to spend time with my family and cousins and talk about something that we all had just a joy doing. And these times are nuts, and it's just this gives us some positive outlook on something, right? I mean, it's Aunt Virginia Lennon said, "I'm crying." Like I'm not at that point yet, but it brings back these memories of, and then you get mad, like, why did your family go to Branson? We could have had this forever, and Denny, why did you guys move? It was just, there were so many different things that took place, but we're always going to look back and no regrets, just no regrets.
It lived its 13 years over, oh, whoa. What happened? Are we getting shut down by local organized crime syndicate?
Oh, boy.
Oh, shit.
Whoa. Did you see that, Kip?
Well, just me. Hi, everyone. I didn't see it.
Did you see what happened?
No.
It was like a crime syndicate guy came on our screen, and next thing we know, we went black.
Oh, guy in the hat. He looks shady.
Yeah, he did look shady.
I really wanted to hear his take on the court too.
There was 13 years. We had 12 events, and it had its own time and place. I remember there were so many people that said, "Well, just move it down to the beach," or just go to like Penmar Park and put up a bunch of courts. And while it was a good idea to like get everybody back together, because it was a big reunion for several high schools, St. Bernard, St. Monica, Venice High, and so forth. It was like a reunion for everybody, and everybody loved that, and they loved the post party. It wasn't the same if we're not going from backyard to backyard. And I just always kind of felt like it had its time and its place in that spot, and it lived there. And so, you reference it and I reference it when we say 25 years ago, but that was the last event. It was 38 years ago that this started, right? And then that's crazy to think it was 38 years ago that this started. Wow. We none of us were married. None of us, had any real concrete job that meant anything. It was all about having like this great big party. And then 13 years later, a lot of us had moved and done different things. So it was really kind of interesting. It had its perfect time and place from, I think it was from the time I was 19, or 18 till I was like 32 or something like that. And it had that place in your life. And I think that was concurrent for a lot of different people that had that year. I think your mom wrote in something about she was Queen Den Dog. Yeah, there it is. And if you remember the first year, everybody called it the Den Dog because that was my name back then.
Okay.
And the second year, little known fact, it was the Venice Backyard Open.
Oh.
But then we knew we couldn't keep it open because too many people liked it. And then also VBC just sounded better. It just kind of it was a better marketing tool. And and then we changed it by year 3 to Venice Backyard Championships.
Wow.
I've got all my bars.
Oh, Ray?
Damn it.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
there he is. Hey, Ray.
Well,
He may
Ray?
have all the bars on the way.
Ray?
You there, Ray? Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I love
he's
you,
good
Ray.
to look at. I'm not gonna lie. He's fun to look at.
Okay. Well,
Easy on the guys.
So much, Denny. You're probably not going to want to have me back because I lied. I lied and I said the show is going to be 30 to 40
I
minutes.
told you
It's
this.
gone over.
This is what happens. Yeah.
So I want to apologize
No,
for that. But you know what?
this was a good run. This was fun.
Yeah,
on
we
point.
have a lot of fun, and there's so much we can cover. And
Jenny Mikovic signed in too. Yay.
Oh,
Yeah.
you on the Queen.
It's just so much fun doing, and I we could probably talk about this for 2, 3, 4, 5 more hours, days. But I think Kip, I'm going to pass the reins on to you next week, and I think you're going to be able to come up with something fun for next week. And Denny, you're amazing, dude. All the stuff that you do, and then you're able to do this too. I don't get it. We're on your platform, and we support that. And thank you so much for letting us do this. This is so cool.
You just pay the bill when it comes. And Kip, I know you do a good Jerry Lewis, and you might want to think about a Jerry Lewis kind of telethon for next week. And we go ahead and we just push right through to midnight.
We have a new total, Jerry. Do it. Yeah, I'll work on it. Well,
I have to give a shout out. My son Parker, who was born in 1994, which was a year before. Yeah.
Wow.
Asked if we could bring this event back. But I get that question all the time. And Denny, you hit it on the head. It's like, where are we going to do it? It's not the same.
I don't know. The uniqueness of it would be the backyard. And I think when we go to do the documentary and the reality series concurrently, that whoever is funding that, Netflix, YouTube, or Prime Video, whomever, will go ahead and just buy a house with a nice backyard court where we can all kind of relive it as we talk about it. And so that's the house we all go, house up in, and it has multiple rooms and a backyard court, and we play games and we talk about the event. And that's what I think we wait for.
Someday.
All right.
Enough property.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm good. I think we covered a lot in the time that we had. And I want to thank Gil. I want to thank Christine. What an unbelievable job you did today. And it's
on point.
You get better and better every week. And Michael Lennon said it, but you do. And thank you. Thank you. Denny, thank you. Kip.
He was just flipping the bird.
Co-pilot all the way. Thank you for being my, and I'm here to help you next week.
Mike, can you throw it to Box Cobbler Entertainment, because we don't,
I would like to bring the Box Cobbler Entertainment back for your enjoyment, for the thousands and millions of listeners, ladies and gentlemen, the Box Cobbler.
Well played. Well played. Mute, everybody. Mute. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is supported by the AAU. Find a local event and join at aausports.org. And remember, you can catch your favorite amateur sports live stream, replays, and highlights at ballertv.com. Sports Stories, along with East Bay, supports the Heroes Movement, a nonprofit that bridges the gap from mental or physical therapy to getting strong again through strength and conditioning workouts. This free service is available for any veteran of the United States Armed Forces. Visit heroesmovementusa.org for more information. Sports Stories, along with thousands of people across the country, also supports the My Stuff Bags Foundation, a nonprofit that provides traumatized children with new belongings and new hope. Learn more at mystuffbags.org. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories, Inc. and is available on Apple Podcasts and YouTube or wherever you listen and watch. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and give us a review. It really helps spread the word. You can find all our social media links, archives, and other info on our website at sportsstoriespodcast.com. Special thanks to the John R. Wooden Course and Wooden's Wisdom. Original music for Sports Stories is courtesy of Lennon Music Productions. Original images by Sienna Lennon Photography. Sports Stories is produced by Christine Jimbo and Marley Rice. Sports Stories is edited by Bob McCall. Additional staff include Ray Castro, Teresa Dolan, Jake Downey, Carlos Haro, and Buck Magic Lennon. Kick it out, Buck!
Yeah, kick it out! Kick it out! Yeah, buddy! Way to kick it out! Good job!